And this brings us into our two movements here, neoclassicism and romanticism. And we'll see that as we're moving out of the 1700s and into the 1800s, we'll begin to see multiple movements happening at one time and overlapping, and the movements get shorter and shorter and shorter. We would have like Renaissance, a couple hundred years. Now we're going to start to see these movements get shorter and shorter, and as we move through the 1800s and up into the 1900s, we'll see sometimes the movements are only like 5 or 10 years. So when we look at the first one here, neoclassicism, neo, N-E-O, it means new. So it's just new classicism. The classicism is always referring to Greek and Roman when we're talking about art. So it's a reinterpretation of the Greek and Roman art. And then romanticism is the idea of romantic. We know what that means. But this is different than just lovey-dovey romantic. This is also like sometimes just like the intense emotion of romanticism, or I should say the intense emotion of romance. And it actually sometimes takes on like a nightmarish quality, a kind of gloomy, dark quality to it. So we'll see that. Okay, so here's a great example of neoclassicism. We have this carving, and it is made out of marble, and we see the figures are very realistic here, and we have Cupid, and we have these figures from mythology that are shown here, and they are carved. Remember though that when I said way back in the beginning of the semester that when these are originally made in the Greek and Roman time period, they're all painted. So it's kind of interesting that they get reinvented here, and even in the Renaissance, reinvented in the Renaissance, but they're never repainted. They're always these stark white imageries. And here's a great, Fuseli is a great artist when we look at the idea of romanticism. So we see, you can hopefully see what I mean. This is called the nightmare. So the nightmare, not what we think of when you say the word romantic, okay? We have this woman, and is she passed out? Is she dead? What has happened to her? We don't know. We have this kind of demon creature sitting here on top of her. This horse with the bug eyes putting its head into the room. It's very dark. We see this kind of ominous shadow here. So this is romanticism. This is, very dark palette, brown, a lot of browns and shadows and stuff. Also, with romanticism, we're not going to see really, really crisp lines in it. We're going to see more lines like this that are kind of hazy and not so crisp and clean, kind of fuzzy. So let's look at some neoclassic paintings in France, or neoclassicism. This is an artist. Now his last name is spelled like David, but it's pronounced David because the French sometimes are a little crazy in the way they pronounce things. So this is Jacques-Louis David, and this is the Oath of the Horatian. And this is a story, or an interpretation of a story. Maybe it took place, maybe it didn't. But it's right around the time of the Revolution. And we have the father here who is wishing his 3 sons, Roman soldiers, good luck to go off in battle. Now, at this time period, if you're, say, in France and you're going off into battle, or wherever you're going off into battle, you might be gone for years, and you might die, so you might never come back. And so you see there are 3 wives back here lamenting. This one has children, they're crying, they don't know if they're ever going to see their husbands again. So it's the idea of sacrifice for the cause of the revolution, that one must be willing to sacrifice. So now David plays out things politically very well. He was really smart with this stuff. So he picks the right side of the revolution, and he comes out fine with that. And then we have Napoleon comes into power. He gets in with Napoleon. He does this portrait of Napoleon. Here, Bonaparte on his horse, going up the hill here, lots of movement, lots of drama. We've got these strong diagonals this way, diagonals this way, and he shows him in all his glory going into battle, and in the background you see his army crossing over here. I guess this is the Alps, right? So crossing over here, the cannon being pushed up. And then he's able to actually, after Napoleon is no longer in power, he still is able to stay in Paris, David this is, and come out unscathed. So somehow he was able to navigate the politics of the time very nicely. And he was very well liked. And then he goes and he paints, and he continues to paint portraits and becomes really well known in Paris for that. And he teaches at the academy, at one of the academies there, and he becomes well known for being a teacher. Now, one of his most famous pupils was this painter I'm showing you here. Very strange last name here. You pronounce it Ingres. Ingres. And this is a cross between some of the ideas from neoclassicism and some of the ideas from romanticism. So you can see that he paints like beautifully. The brushwork, the details are so beautifully done in this painting. However, when you look at it, some things are really weird about her body. So for one, she seems to have too long of a back. This is way too long. And if you follow this leg, it would be attached like somewhere up here. Very strange. So this is the idea of kind of coming out of romanticism, that things are not quite making sense, and he's doing this on purpose. It's not that he couldn't paint the human body correctly. This is purposefully done. The neoclassicism is all this spectacular detail and the shadows and the reflections and everything. And what you're being shown here is the large odalisque. So the idea is that you've gone to some place like Turkey or Morocco or something like that, a foreign land. And this is a brothel. This is a woman who is a prostitute. She has been smoking something here, most likely hashish. And then she is here waiting for her next customer, more or less. And she kind of looks to see who's come in, and it would most likely be the next customer. So she hides her body from us. So she has some kind of control over the situation, but not completely. And certainly if she's under the influence of drugs, she certainly doesn't really have the complete situation control of her body. If you remember back to the Titian painting I showed you a while ago, the Venus of Urbino, we can make a direct correlation between that painting and this painting. So that will bring us into neoclassical architecture in England and the United States. So I'll stop here and then I'll make a new video.